Alright YouTube, so we are back, of course, to talk about some Final Fantasy VII Remake. So not even 2 weeks ago, we finally got the release of the English version of the remake of Material Ultimania. It's not the Ultimania Plus, I don't think it is, and it's not. We don't have an English version of like the regular Ultimania yet. So obviously we've been kind of at the mercy of people that want to translate this whenever they want to translate it until now. Now that you have an English version, people are obviously digging through this thing, trying to find all kinds of bits of information. Move today is something very, very cool. First off, big shout out to Ultima786 for posting this over on Reddit. They had purchased the Kindle version, the digital version of this, which if you want to do, it'll save you like $10. $10 more for hard copy, of course. And also the fact that there's an English digital version of this now, there'll probably be a PDF file before long where you can procure it on the low, we'll say. So what we're looking at here is Chapter 18 stuff, Edge Creation, Sephiroth and Cloud, and possible explanations of what might be going on here with the remake story. And Ultima mentioned this in their post, and it's the first thing I thought of when I started reading over like them breaking this stuff down is, how has nobody translated this? I've never seen a translation of this stuff that we're about to look at right here, and the Material Ultimania has been out since October 2020. A fucking year and like 2-3 months or some shit. Like what? Dude, if I got Material Ultimania, if I understood Japanese and I got one of these Ultimanias, I'd be flipping it directly to Chapter 18. That's where the juicy bits are. Obviously it's possible, and I'm sure somebody out there has translated this somewhere, but it's just not like made the rounds. I've not seen this shit yet. So what we're looking at here is the storyboard breakdown for the Edge Creation scene in Remake, and Ultima does point out that within the Material Ultimania, they give you a disclaimer for if something is not potentially canon, and they don't have that warning here, which means that what we're looking at here is canon. So the first interesting bit is this panel right here where it shows that Sephiroth puts on a confident smile, and this is where he raises his sword up, which would be this scene from the Edge Creation where he asks Cloud to lend him his strength, and Cloud denies him. But apparently people interpreted the face he makes in that scene as him being maybe disappointed in Cloud, maybe he expected Cloud to help him in that moment, but based on this panel and Sephiroth smiling in that moment, it seems like maybe that's exactly what he wanted. I guess I'd never heard the discussion of Sephiroth being disappointed in Cloud in that moment, but I mean he knows Cloud pretty well, and clearly Cloud was going to deny him, so it had to have been what he wanted, because why would he think Cloud would ever join him? Cloud wants to kill him. This Cloud right now still doesn't know the truth of everything. He's still pissed at Sephiroth for destroying Nibelheim. Why would he help him? There's no way Sephiroth thought he would. So the next very intriguing bit is from panel 30 of the storyboard, but it's mostly the top segment that says, Space shows contrast between the universe of death and the universe of creation. Now that section is referring to this part of the Edge of Creation right after Sephiroth raises his sword or after Cloud denied him, and it does the pan down shot, and you see Sephiroth on the left, Cloud on the right, that wide angle shot. So obviously without even really going further into this raises a lot of goddamn questions, right? It seems to be confirming multiple universes, multiple timelines, something we've been talking about for a very long time. Talks about the contrast between the universe of death and the universe of creation. It's something we've been talking about since the first month or two of this game being released. Multiple timelines, universes, realities, worlds, whatever it is. And this seems to be leaning towards that. So this part here I want to read specifically from Ultima that says, does this mean the Edge of Creation scene represents two futures? One where the entire universe is at stake, the other represents a rebirth? Did Sephiroth and Aerith somehow bring about the rebirth of the entire universe, usually referred to by the community as a new timeline? Is Remake simply the new universe? Are the flashbacks and flash forwards simply glimpses of this other universe? Speculation. Did Square Enix pull the trigger of showing Meteor early on to show us later that the new threat Sephiroth will bring about is actually Supernova and the destruction of the cosmic livestream, not just Gaia's livestream? So first off, I like the idea that maybe the visions we're getting throughout Remake are from the alternate timeline, the other universe or whatever the case. They're not necessarily visions of the future, though they are the future of this timeline, of the Remake timeline, because we haven't got to those moments yet, but maybe they're just visions from things that have already happened in a separate universe. Also like the idea, and this is obviously just a part of their speculation part, but the idea that Sephiroth's goal with Remake is Supernova, his final attack in the original FF7, as opposed to just striking Gaia with Meteor and trying to absorb Gaia's livestream. Maybe he's trying to tap into the cosmic livestream, the universal livestream, and get insanely powerful. Which I think makes a lot of sense. I think with Remake, they got to raise the stakes, the threat level. And despite what they tell you in marketing, it's not going to be the same Final Fantasy VII. They tell you that all the time. It's simply not going to be. Because I don't think he's going to attempt to destroy the planet with Meteor again, and that be his only end goal. Whereas Supernova is him wiping out multiple planets, and that's a much bigger threat than the original FF7. So what might happen with Remake is maybe he gets his hands on the Black Materia again, and we think we know what's going to happen, right? His Black Materia is going to send it towards Gaia, but we learn that his goal is to throw that meteor at the fucking sun instead. Which, based on the original FF7 and what you're seeing in the background, we know what that result is gonna be. Again, that whole part was pure speculation, and it's not even really what we're talking about in this video, but I thought it was really interesting when I read that, and I think it makes a lot of sense, and I had to discuss it. The next interesting bit is two different panels that further the Universe of Death, Universe of Creation discussion. There's a panel that shows Cloud, and it says, Cloud in ready stance bears the burden of the universe of creation. And then another panel shows Sephiroth, and it says, Sephiroth in ready stance bears the burden of the universe of death. So we were initially at a goddamn load of questions. Now we're up to a shitload. So what might be happening here is that each of them are avatars of their respective universes. For Cloud, it's Universe of Creation, which I think would be the remake universe, because that's where he comes from. That's our world, our universe. That's the game we played. And Sephiroth is from potentially the Universe of Death, which might also imply that this Sephiroth is from a different timeline, different universe. Another implication here could be that the Edge of Creation is simply like a kind of a bridge, if you want to call it that, between multiple timelines and universes and shit. And maybe the Universe of Death is a universe, a timeline where Sephiroth succeeded or will succeed in his endeavors. Universe of Creation is obviously one where maybe the good guys win. Another interpretation I come up with when I'm like reading this and thinking about it is because they carry the burdens of their respective universes, that maybe their death would result in the destruction of their respective universes, which would mean that if we ever do kill Sephiroth, that maybe the universe that he's from, the Universe of Death, could then be destroyed, which would actually be us, even though we're the good guys, resulting in the death of, what, trillions and trillions of life forms and people and shit like that throughout the entire universe. And also, if Cloud were to die, then that would result in the destruction, potentially, of the Universe of Creation. It kind of depends on what they mean, actually, by them carrying the burdens of their respective universes. Something that also might fall in line with this is earlier, before the Edge of Creation stuff, before the Sephiroth fight, after we defeat the Whisperer Harbinger, we get a cutscene where we see this, like, our group in a serene place, and then it cuts to Sephiroth and what appears to be media from the original FF7, and those have been described as Livestream World and Meteor World. So what could potentially be happening here, and this is just, again, my own speculation, is that we're seeing the two separate universes. Maybe that nice looking place is the Universe of Creation, and then Meteor World is maybe a glimpse at the Universe of Death, maybe where Meteor succeeded, potentially. I have no idea if that cutscene has any bearing on the Edge of Creation shit, but I think it is interesting that they're clearly one good world, one evil world, and what appears to be one good universe, one evil universe. Now, moving on from there, we later learned from the storyboard panels which universe is which, and the beautiful one that's like modeled after Sephiroth's wing is apparently the Universe of Death, which is interesting because obviously it looks beautiful, and the one behind Cloud is this like red menacing one. Which, by the way, I also didn't know that this universe was modeled after Jenova, potentially, and when you see the side-by-side image, it definitely seems to be the case. Which that itself can raise a lot of questions, too, because we have one universe that is 100% confirmed by the devs to be modeled after Sephiroth's wing, so modeled after Sephiroth, then we have one that appears to be modeled after Jenova. Maybe there are two different paths, one where the ultimate threat is Sephiroth, maybe one where the ultimate threat is Jenova. So something I personally took note of when watching back through the Edge of Creation scene for the sake of this video, trying to interpret everything or whatever. Whenever Cloud first arrives at the Edge of Creation, Sephiroth actually looks back at the Universe of Death and says, "Our world will become a part of it one day, but I won't end, nor will I have you end."
Our world will become a part of it one day, but I will not end, nor will I have you end.
So for starters, he says our world, which would imply that he's coming from the same world as Cloud, so maybe the Sephiroth isn't from a different timeline or a different universe. Secondly, he talks about their planet, their world joining with the Universe of Death one day. And I don't know about you, but the only thing that makes sense to me whenever I hear that is maybe the Universal Livestream. So despite its name being the Universe of Death, it might not necessarily be a separate alternate timeline or universe. It might just be like the term they're giving it, the Universe of Death, for the Ultimania. And those would lead further like evidence to what we talked about earlier in the video, Supernova. Maybe Sephiroth's plans are to blow up their planet and maybe everything else and join up with the Universal Livestream. But, as he says, he will not end, and he doesn't want Cloud to end either. I never really took note of what Sephiroth said in that scene because we didn't know what that was. We knew that it was modeled after Sephiroth's wing from the Ultimanias and shit like that, but we never knew what it was or what it was called. But now that we know it's called the Universe of Death, and he's talking about the planet joining with it, I'm not really sure what else it could be. Also never realized until just now that the song playing in the background of the scene I just played is the remake version of Listen to the Cries of the Planet, which is the song that's played at the end of Disc 1, which is of course right before Aerith's death. Now in Remake it's called 7 Seconds Till the End. Now, I'm not sure off the top of my head if that theme song is played anywhere else in the original FF7, like outside of the Forgotten Capital or a different part of the story. I'm not sure if the theme comes up. You guys would know that more than I would. But it's definitely, when you hear that song, it's an implication of something very, very bad. And the fact that we're here to then means that there's definitely something foreboding about the Edge of Creation that doesn't really need to be said, but I just never caught on to the song that was playing in the background there until now. Now, obviously, there's a lot more to this Reddit post than what we went over in this video. We're not here to read everything, otherwise this video would be super, super long. I highly recommend you go over there, of course, linked in the description below. There's obviously people replying to this and giving their own thoughts and interpretations. We're not going to read over a lot of those, but there is the first one, like right below it, that talks about how maybe the two different universes we're seeing, assuming that there are two different universes, literally, and then maybe one of these universes is the one where Sephiroth maybe saved Zack, didn't kill Aerith, and the other one is OG where those two have to die, and that maybe Cloud, doesn't want to help him at the edge of creation. Maybe he goes through the events of the original FF7. Zack dies, Aerith dies. He experiences those losses, and then maybe at some point, potentially at the end of what would be the original FF7 story, maybe Cloud and Sephiroth meet up again at the edge of creation, and Sephiroth shows him a universe where maybe Aerith and Zack get to live, and maybe Cloud has to decide between those two. Which I think makes sense in a lot of ways, because at the beginning of their Edge of Creation meeting, he asks Cloud to lend him his strength, and Cloud denies him, but we don't know why he needs Cloud's help. What is the purpose of that? I think it makes a lot of sense, as this person points out, like as a bargaining chip. Like he can offer up a universe where Zack and Aerith didn't die, but there's obviously going to be some sort of catch to that. My dudes, there is a lot to take in here, but I definitely want to know your thoughts. What do you think's going on here, man? We're talking with two separate universes, Universe of Creation, Universe of Death, and Cloud's bears the burden of the Universe of Creation. Sephiroth bears the burden of the Universe of Death. What does this shit mean? What do you think? Do you think that there are actually two separate universes? That's been a very popular theory for a long time. We've talked about it a lot on this channel, but also let's take note of what Sephiroth talks about when we first get to the Edge of Creation, about the planet joining up with the Universe of Death. What do you think of that could potentially mean? Again, huge shout out to Ultima786 for sharing this on Reddit, and as far as I'm aware, this is some groundbreaking information, because this is shit I ain't ever heard before. My dudes, that's going to be the video for today. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you guys already want to see more Final Fantasy VII Remake content. Turn on my notifications. Follow me on Twitter, @DashingDavidYT, and my Discord. Links to my social networks are in the description and in the outro. Later, guys.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Logain, or leave it like Cobain.